today is the difference is that over the course of the semester, when we've talked about specific psychological phenomena, and other related things like cognition, social psych, brain and behavior, all of those kinds of things, I've given you the claim to go investigate, and then you turned it in for assignments, right? Well, today I'm gonna take that role, and I'm just gonna show you what I think is a myth. I mean, the data supports that they're myths too, but I'm gonna just take that from you, and please ask questions. There is a lot of stuff for all of the things that I'm going to talk about. I'm not going to go through the entire DSM. We're only going to scratch the surface of psychopathology, psych disorders. So please, please, please ask questions. If you have a burning question about any of the things that we're talking about, and the things that I did select we are talking about, should be applicable to you in general, but also right now. So if you have a question, just throw it in chat, and I will come to it no matter what. Because I think this information is important. I save it to the end for two reasons. One, because I attach a movie to it, but since we don't have that movie, then that's an issue. Actually, three reasons. So one, movie, don't have that. Oh well. Two, I like to explain psychology, aspects of psychology and psychological science before we get to psych disorders and therapy, because that's what most people come in with a preconception about, is that psychology is about, disorders and mental problems and things like that, and I kind of want to smooth it over and say, no, psychology is all the other things. And then three, I think it's important to leave a good taste in your mouth, and I think this is some solid material to leave a good taste in your mouth as far as this class goes. Not my class, but just Psych 101, okay? So that's what we're going to do today. That's what we're going to do Thursday, and then next Tuesday we'll end it by talking about therapy, okay? So just to get us started, what video did I put in for today? Is it going to load? Yeah, there we go. Yes, I'm not going to play it because the folks at Matchbox 20, or at least their record label, is going to be mad, and I don't really want to deal with that. But you may have heard of Unwell by Matchbox 20, and if you're not familiar, you might want to go read the lyrics or go play it on your computer while you're listening to me. It's a pretty good song, Unwell, Matchbox 20. It's, I would say, how old is it? I'd say it's almost 20 years old, something like that, because it came out when I was in high school, so it's somewhere around there. Did it come out while I was in high school? Yeah, I think so. I played it for a high school project about Holden Caulfield from Catcher in the Rye, right? I think that's the book. Yeah, so it came around there. Anyways, it's a good song, and I think it captures the back and forth between a person who is suffering from some sort of psychological disorder. Came out in 2002. There you go. Boom. Thanks, Meredith. Appreciate it. So it's almost 20 years. 18 years old. Between somebody suffering from a psych disorder and society's perception of that person suffering from a psych disorder. Because the lyric goes, I'm not crazy, I'm just a little unwell. And I think that speaks to the language that we use regarding psych disorders. as a society, and how damaging it can be, right? Right? People who suffer from psych disorders potentially have a biopsychosocial illness, which is what we're kind of gonna go through in these series of classes. And it's not fair, nor is it polite or right to say that they are crazy. Okay, even if the traditional use of crazy, or the offhand use of crazy, it represents somebody who's like going through a psychotic episode. Because we are going to talk a little bit about psychotic disorders and something like schizophrenia, which the music video generally shows, right? And so we shouldn't even be calling those people crazy, because that's not fair. So take a listen, take a read of the lyrics. I think it's a good thing. The other thing I wanted to show to get started were the tips that I put up based on Meredith's question for the Grab Bag Psych a couple of weeks ago. And so these are the links for how to deal with depression and anxiety, and those are two topics that we are going to talk about. We're definitely going to get to anxiety today. We'll probably introduce depression, but then talk in depth on depression on Thursday. So if you're intrigued to know about anxiety today, stick around. Thursday, of course, we'll get into depression and probably psychotic disorders, and then Tuesday therapy. We'll just have a big therapy sesh. I'm not trained, nor am I qualified to lead a therapy session, but I can at least tell you about therapy. So these are a few resources. So CDC, obviously, the Centers for Disease Controls and Prevention, right? Managing stress and anxiety during the it's literally coronavirus right there, right? Talkspace.com, I found this one was specifically for college, university, and campus students. I'm sure it's been bopped over your head constantly over and over and over again as college students, like how you should be feeling versus what you should be feeling versus what you should do about those feelings, right? So no pressure on going to any of these sites. You do you, and don't let anybody tell you different. The National Association Alliance of Mental Health. I forgot what NAMI stands for. I'm bad, because I should know. Anyways, they're a nonprofit organization. They have some tips for how to handle depression and anxiety. The APA, this is the American Psychological Association, not the American Psychiatric Association, of which we are going to discuss today because of their large publication, Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, Mental Disorders. They have a lot of information. Like, if I were to choose which one of these to go to first, I would go here, because this link has a ton of resources that it links to. So, and they're psychologists. I'd say that's a good idea. And then I also found another college students from the McLean School, which is connected to Harvard. Okay, Harvard University. Okay, so I'm thinking McLean School of Medicine or something like that. I'm not entirely sure, but McLean Hospital. There we go. Says it right there in the link. Hey, dummy. So these are specific links for our current time. I will probably draw upon examples as I go through it. As I go through the classification, the large classification of disorders, I will. Hey, Slayerdar. I will bring those about. Okay. So let's get this one started. Okay. Here, I'm going to use this myth to just describe the sort of model that we're going to use to explore the rest of disorders. Okay. So let me know in chat if you've seen this meme before. Okay. Obviously, it's a myth, right? Obviously, it's a myth. Personality weakness or character flaws cause mental health problems. People with mental health problems can snap out of it if they try hard enough. Okay? How many of you have seen this meme before? This is an antidepressant. It's a forest scene of some sort. And then this is a lifelong addiction, which is a series of unmarked pills and pill bottles. Have you... Okay, well, if you haven't seen the meme before, have you heard the sentiment? Have you heard the sentiment behind this myth? Have you heard this myth in general? It's been around for decades upon centuries. It's quite pervasive. Interesting. Interesting. Some yeses, some nos. Okay. Okay. All right. Obviously, it's a myth because I've written it up there, right? It's a myth. And I'll tell you why. And so I'm going to couch the two approaches that we're going to take, or that we can kind of compare and contrast to discussing, diagnosing, and treating psychological disorders, right? So the first one that I want to talk about is it's the sort of older idea. I'm not going as far back as I could, which is to a place where what the Greeks thought about mental disorders, or what societies in Western Europe or Eastern, or like Eastern, East Asia had during like the Middle Ages, or like around the year 1000, like trephination, like cutting a hole in somebody's head and letting them bleed out. Like we're well beyond that. We're well beyond that. We are going to establish that yes, psychological disorders are a real thing, and so let's talk about how we classify them, diagnose them, and treat them. And so here we are with the medical model. So this came around about the 1800s. Okay, so it's relatively fresh as far as the history of determining why mental illnesses are a thing. Okay, so we're just why people get psychological disorders and how you can treat them, right? So the 1800s, so the search began for the physical causes of those psych disorders. And the medical model is a curative model, okay? So if you have a disorder, what can we do to fix it? Okay. So the idea behind the medical model is that mental illness, hence why that phrase is so important, right, can be diagnosed, same way that your appendicitis can be diagnosed, on the basis of symptoms. So we have observable effects that can be treated through therapy. What therapy here is used broadly, okay? Not just talk therapy as we kind of use it today, but it can be any kind of therapy, okay? Often in a psychiatric hospital, right? And so that's what the medical model is like. You go see a doctor who has medical training in anatomy and physiology, and this particular doctor has a specialty in the diagnosis and symptoms of mental illness, and you get treated there at the psychiatric hospital, okay? And so you don't see too many psychiatric hospitals anymore. And there could be a reason behind that. They were garbage, right? Slayer Darth, is this where procedures such as electroconvulsive therapy developed in and around this time as a way to generate seizures in somebody's mind, which the idea is that it resets some wiring, okay? It's helpful for some disorders. I'll talk about that next Tuesday. Today, the idea behind this illness being diagnosed, treated through therapy in a psychiatric hospital is more or less an exploration of what genetic influences change brain chemistry and brain structure. Okay. And I want to say recent is probably the past 40 some years, right? So we didn't discover, DNA until 1940s. So, DNA has only, and genes have only been around for, or at least at the microscopic level, have only been around for about 80 some years, right? 70 some years. So, yeah, having this understanding that predates that, right, 1800s, to now, we can kind of mesh the two together. So genetic influences that change brain chemistry and brain structure, biochemistry, etc. But it's still something that can be cured, okay? Still something that can be cured. Does that sound like something that you can just pull yourself up by your bootstraps? I don't think so. I mean, even if we say, okay, this is the model that we're going to use, this is the only thing. A lifelong addiction, would you say that to somebody who was taking Lipitor for their cholesterol? I don't think so. I don't think so, Tim. You wouldn't walk up to somebody and say, hey, person with the heart condition, you're addicted to those beta blockers. How dare you? How dare you? You are addicted, and you are the worst kind of human being. Like, you wouldn't go up to somebody and say that, right? So, why would you say, if we're going to use this model, why would you say it when we have this idea here for mental disorders? It's because you can't see them, okay? There are issues with that, right? Can't observe what's going on in somebody's mind. And here we have the answer, the helpful answer to that, which is the biopsychosocial approach. And I may have mentioned this elsewhere in the semester. I don't remember if I have. Lots of things are sort of, at this point, sort of being conflated together. So I don't honestly know. But you can see that it is multiple things, right? It's the biological aspect that we just talked about, but it's also the psychological aspect, thoughts and behaviors, as well as the social and cultural factors that play a role in shaping one's psychology and biology, okay? They all play a significant role in functioning, and they all play a role in how disease/illness/disorders manifest and run their courses. So it's not enough to say, oh, it's just your biology that's broken. It's not enough to say it. It's maybe something is impacting the way that you're thinking, which is what we'll talk about extensively with depression. Maybe it's the societal and cultural ways in which you grew up that then modifies how you think about psychology or how your biology is being changed and shaped, right? Slayer came from hardship and can understand suffering from depression. Yeah, that's the social cultural factors right there. As Slayer Darth is putting it, social cultural factors in how psych disorders are viewed and where a lot of the stigma comes from. Some people think that they pull themselves up by their bootstraps. Why can't other people pull themselves up by their bootstraps? Okay. A related idea for why culture is so important, why culture and environment is so important, is that some disorders don't actually exist based on culture. Okay. So you've probably heard of anorexia nervosa and bulimia nervosa, two eating disorders. You've probably heard of them because, for the vast majority of you, you're in the United States. And you've heard of them because they exist here. Okay. They don't necessarily exist in food poor countries, if at all. So if you find a food poor country, like we'll take Somalia in the 1990s, where there was a huge focus on the fact that most children in Somalia were being malnourished, and you've likely seen pictures of them. You would not anticipate anorexia or bulimia being found there. Okay? It appears that food-abundant cultures, like Western cultures, have this issue. Okay? So that's why we also need to include... I'm not saying the medical model is wrong. I think it's just one facet that doesn't take into account psychological and social cultural things, and I think we need to take those into account. Being a psychologist myself, that's incredibly important, right? So those are the two models that I wanted to share with you that completely and utterly refute the idea, and just to put it all out on the table, here's another version of the meme, where the forest is being considered an antidepressant, okay, and then this has obviously been modified, okay. So this is a anti-meme, okay, if that makes sense. An anti-meme, okay, where this is shit used to just be over the pills, okay. I'm not entirely sure what those pills are, but they look like over-the-counter things like medication for cold and flu, your anti-diarrheals, or your what's it called? Allergy medication. It doesn't even look like antidepressants. So, whoever made this meme kind of sucked. But shit is crossed out. Shit is crossed out, and I hope you can read it, depending on the size of your viewing window here. But If you can't, it says, this is a perfectly sound and medically proven way to reduce the effects of anxiety and depression, because not everyone has the ability to make it all go away by meditating in the fucking woods, Brenda. Yeah. But I think that's an important idea. While being in nature is helpful for a lot of people, and there is research that suggests that nature therapy is useful, lots of people can't do that. Lots of people can't. What if you live in a big ass city and you don't have a big old forest right next to it? You know? If you can take the medication, you can take the medication. Come on. So, and the whole Brenda thing is like the whole Brenda, Karen, Janet, yeah, white girl names. So, if we're going to take the biopsychosocial approach, which is what we are going to do, of course, so we're going to talk about all three facets when it comes to the disorders that I've curated for this material. We're going to talk about genetic predispositions and physiological states. This has become an important idea when we talk about anxiety here in just a second. Psychological dynamics, so thoughts and behaviors and how you are thinking about the world and how you're navigating the world, your world around you. And then the circumstances of your society and culture. Okay, so that is how we are going to play this. The idea is also emphasizing that the mind and body are inseparable, so we are going to take the stance of what is called monists or monism. Okay, mind and body are the same thing. Okay. A more recent concept is then also epigenetics, which I haven't talked about in this class, and I'm not going to go into too much detail about it. But the idea about epigenetics is that your ancestors play a role in your gene expression. Not just the fact that they've shared their genes with you, right, to create new offspring, but the influences from their environment play a role in gene expression. Okay, so not only does their environment play a role, but your environment plays a role on gene expression. So, it's cool. All right. How many of you have seen this myth? Or heard this myth? Thoughts on this myth? Anxiety isn't a real illness. Because we're going to jump into a discussion of anxiety. Leona, you have? Okay. Of course it's untrue. I have the myth written next to it. Hopefully, eventually, I'll see a bunch of no's. As I get older, but my students stay the same age, I'll see a bunch of no's. Okay? Meredith, you laugh out loud every time you hear this. I love it. Oh, somebody even Peoria is calling me. Don't know who that is. Maybe Walgreens. Yeah, maybe Walgreens. Slayer Darth, the woman at your dad's workplace tried to claim her anxiety was a disability. Maybe is. Let's not make comments about other people's hidden disabilities. Yes, it is a myth. I'm glad that you, Meredith and Ashlyn, I'm glad that you laugh out loud when you hear this. Because there is a lot associated with this, of course, right? How many of you, and you can kind of just like put an emoji so you don't, if you don't want to disclose anything that you don't want to, in chat, you can like use an emoji. How many of you struggle with anxiety or know somebody who struggles with anxiety? Either on a clinical level or a subclinical level. If you don't want to disclose, then you can kind of just use an emoji to just answer the question broadly, right? Yeah, or exclamation points or something, right? I'm gonna let you all in on a little secret, although it's not really, I don't really consider it a secret, actually. I don't know if I've mentioned this in class before, but I suffer from clinical anxiety, and the first one that we are going to talk about is the one that I suffer from. And I do take medication to assist me in dealing with it. I'm open about it. And it's gonna be a lifelong struggle. There's not gonna be a cure for it. I wish I could go to therapy, but you know, insurance is not 100%. And so when I hear somebody say something like that, I don't necessarily laugh, although I appreciate that response. It doesn't make me angry. It makes me sad that somebody is willing to buy into this idea that, you know, your mind is some imaginary place where things just happen. Okay? So it makes me sad. It makes me sad when this kind of stuff is repeated. More often than anything else. Hey, Ollie. That's my son. That's Ollie. He got a haircut today. He got a home haircut. I got one a couple of days ago. He got one just this morning. His birthday's on Thursday, everyone. His birthday's on Thursday. So I hope you all say happy birthday to him on Thursday. Not today. Thursday. Alright. Then can you head back upstairs, por favor? Okay, thanks. Yes, he is the TA that doesn't do any work. So, let's talk about anxiety. So this is my brand. This is my brand of of anxiety. So I took it out of the slides because I was like, this really doesn't. I'll just verbalize this. So one of the ways that I am using, or the way that I am using to group these together and then identify them and then talk about their causes and treatments, is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, the DSM. And the one that this information comes from is the DSM-V, which is the 5th edition, which was released in 2013, published in 2013 by the other APA, the American Psychiatric Association. These are medical doctors who have received extensive training in psychological disorders. And so through clinical practice, develop criteria, symptomatology for various disorders, and then put them in a classification. And so, and this comes with treatment options and prognoses, and treatment options, all sorts of things. It's all in this one book. And I don't have a copy of it. I used to have a DSM-4TR, which came out about a decade before the DSM-5, but I don't know where that is now. I honestly don't know where that is. Anyways, DSM-5 has made several changes. Some changes that were good, some changes that were bad, some changes that were necessary, some changes that were seen as awkward. One of the major criticisms of the DSM-5 was that it was pathologizing life. So a significant quantity of it was a minority of clinicians and practitioners cited that there was too much to the diagnoses and classifications, and so it was seemingly pathologizing life. That is, making the experience of life pathological. Which obviously isn't great, right? Life should not be considered pathological. Just because you're alive shouldn't mean that you are suffering. Although some people think that, right? So, be that as it may. That was one of the bigger criticisms. So, let's talk about... so, anxiety disorders is an umbrella classification. The first one that I want to talk about is generalized anxiety disorder. It is sometimes referred to as GAD. G-A-D. GAD. Okay? And this is a catch-all diagnosis for pretty much broad anxiety symptoms. The criteria is rather loose, and sort of fits the gaps that other more specific anxiety disorders would if you express those symptoms. I don't know if that makes sense, but we're gonna be talking about other disorders, specific disorders. Kyler, who is Slayer Darth? I don't know. You have to ask him. He's a member of the interested public. So, generalized anxiety disorder is someone who exhibits the following broad symptoms: continually tense, apprehensive, and in a state of autonomic arousal. So that is sympathetic autonomic arousal, right? So fight or flight response is seemingly on a hair trigger, okay? It goes off no matter what, okay? And this is characterized psychologically by continual worry, and then often jittery, on edge, and sleep deprived. Okay? Because sleep deprivation comes from the continual worry, you may have experience with that, and then jittery and on edge will keep you awake. It will keep you awake. And those things will lead to lack of concentration on tasks, right? And so this is what a psychologist or a psychiatrist would do, is they would ask, how do you perform on your day-to-day tasks? Like, what's your job? What do you work? How are you doing with that? Do you make mistakes, right? Okay, so you're sleep deprived. Why are you not getting enough sleep? And so on and so forth. And you can sort of roll back the effects clock, the effects observation clock, and find that, it's generalized anxiety, okay? A specific criterion is when anxiety is free-floating, okay? Which separates this from the other anxiety disorders that I'm going to tell you about. It separates this from the other anxiety disorders, okay? So, not sure why that was. So the fact that this criterion exists says that, okay, we can diagnose this person with GAD rather than panic disorder, which we'll talk about next, okay? And GAD generally is comorbid with bouts of depression, but it's usually debilitating on its own, right? And so clinical levels of this depend on how negatively it impacts your life, right? So, you know, GAD is pretty much all-consuming and forever present. Forever present. Yep, Juliet can confirm that it is no fun. I agree. Okay. And GAD can lead to physical problems like high blood pressure. If you're constantly under a state of fight or flight response, yeah, that's going to put some wear and tear strain on your cardiovascular system, your respiratory system, your endocrine system. It sucks. Okay. It sucks. All right. Moving on. So again, umbrella of anxiety disorders, panic disorder. So we take GAD and we add another crappy layer to it. Okay. Another crappy layer to it. And that is panic disorder. Okay. So we have all of the features of GAD associated with panic disorder, but then we add panic attacks. Let me know in chat if you or someone you know has issues with panic attacks, right? And so panic attacks are described thusly, okay? Unpredictable, minutes-long episodes of intense dread in which a person experiences terror and accompanying chest pain, choking, or other frightening sensations. Right? And these are physical sensations. These actually afflict the person in panic. Okay. They're rough. I can say that I thankfully do not have panic disorders, panic attacks, but I know several people who do, and I've watched some of them, and it's not fun, right? You can just see literal fear in their eyes, right? Terror. Experience terror, okay? Generally speaking, panic is a panic attack is uncontrollable and lots of times they're treated with medication, okay? Something like an anti-anxiolytic, like Xanax, right? This is a calming drug. This calms people down, okay? It doesn't treat the underlying anxiety, but at least calms the person down. So that's panic, okay? And because panic disorder is essentially GAD with panic attacks, the constant worry, the continual worry, generally speaking, comes over when the next attack is going to come, okay? Like, when is this going to happen again? Okay. I've included what has been considered a phobia for a very long time, but actually moved into panic disorder, which is called agoraphobia, right? So the next slide is about phobias in general, where we might have just a smidge of fun. Agoraphobia is the avoidance of public situations, but where escape may be difficult. Okay, so the agora was the marketplace in ancient Greece, so that's where this idea comes from, right? So so fear of being in a crowded place and not being able to escape is pretty consuming for a lot of people, which leads to panic attacks. Okay, especially if escape during a panic attack is unmanageable. Okay, so that's why agoraphobia was put with panic disorder and no longer with phobias, because agoraphobia is specifically tuned to these big places, right? This is not to be confused with things like xenophobia, you know, fear of people or other people of other races, or blanking on the word now. Fear of being outside. Those are not the same as agoraphobia. Okay, this is specifically large groups, public situations. Okay. Okay. Any questions about GAD or panic disorder before we move on? Again, questions. I know you have questions. Ask questions from your personal experience. Now that I've talked about, so we're going to get into the more specific, far less common, although phobias, generally speaking, are common, except clinical phobias. Most of you probably have a phobia, but not clinical phobias. And so generalized anxiety disorder and panic disorder are fairly common in the population. We're talking about teens of percentages. Sometimes up into 20%. 1 out of 5, we'll say. It's a good round figure. 1 out of 5 people suffer from generalized anxiety disorder. That's a lot. 1 out of 5. So, in the age of COVID, how are we dealing with our anxiety? What coping mechanisms have we developed for dealing with our anxieties? Let me know in chat. Where'd everybody go? Ashton says, I've been going out on little runs, trying to think about other things. Very good. I like that. If you run enough, maybe you could join cross country when it gets restarted. If we're back in the fall. Drawing, Julia. Okay. What else? What else have we been doing? Now's the time to open up. Let all that pent up anxiety spill. Painting, I like it. That's very good. Is it calming, Leona? Does it calm you down? What kind of painting do you do? Painting some vans? Like the shoes or the vehicle? Meredith says writing in a journal. It's also very good, very therapeutic to write in a journal. I love it. Shoes. Okay, very good. Ashton will not be doing that, but if you had a track team. Oh, I see. Okay. Canvas painting. I like it. Datavian, I was asking, what were your coping strategies, coping activities for the COVID anxiety? What are you doing these days to handle any anxiety right now? Elena says lots of listening to music or doing other things. Okay, all right. That's useful. I like that. What kind of games are you playing, Ashton? I just noticed that you mentioned playing games. What kind of games are you pling? I imagine like Xbox, PS4 games. that sort of thing. Oh my goodness. I'm very burpy this morning. Things that I'm doing to cope. So I've been watching a lot more TV, as you do. I've been trying to do those live streams with just sort of being. Started playing Civ. Still doing my podcast, and so I enjoy doing that. Yeah, obviously playing with the kids, although they're a bit crazy, so do I play with them all the time? Nah. Tatavian, you're playing some Call of Duty. 2K. Yeah, my birthday's coming up too. Ollie's birthday's on Thursday. We should really crack out the Wii. We have one too. Oh my god, it would look so bad on TV that we have. It would look so bad. We should do that. We have a Wii board too. Like, talk about doing stuff to keep exercising, right? I'm glad that you are forcing them to play. What is 2K, folks? Is that NBA 2K? Madden 2K? I don't know what 2K is. Battlefront 2, Modern Warfare, Overwatch, and Rocket League. Okay, it is basketball. All right, that's fair. Where's everyone else in the class? These are the only people who are typing. Everyone else needs to type something. Come on. I want to see somebody type something that I haven't seen yet. Somebody I haven't seen yet. Come on now. No socializing, no anxiety, sarcoptes. Interesting name. Well, I'm glad that's your only source of anxiety. We're gonna actually talk about that with respect to phobias. I'm glad you have that. I'm glad that's working out for you. Destiny, Smite, and Modern Warfare. What do we have? Do we have Xboxes or do we have PS4s? Anybody gonna get a PS5? Anybody get that COVID? Anybody get that COVID cash up in here? Been playing some PC games, Ben? Okay. PS4 or choke? PS2, Christine, I love it. I had a OG PlayStation. I got rid of it years and years and years ago. Before they renamed it PS1 and they made it all like small and stuff. I had like the OG PS. It was great. Valorant. What kind of game is Valorant, Ben? Julia, do you have what's it called? Animal Crossing? I think that, yeah. Kyler playing some Xbox One. Okay. That's the newest one, right? Because I think the one before that was, what, Xbox 360? I don't get Microsoft's naming convention for Xbox. It's actually stupid. Trevor, a bad one. I don't know what you mean. Oh, you're saying the game that he's playing is a bad one. Oh. Oh. Uh-oh. CSGO and Overwatch. Okay, I'll have to look into that. That's, it's interesting. I mean, I likely do not have a computer set up right here that can actually handle that. But I'll look into that. Okay, Datavian, you're gonna get a PS5 on your stim check. Okay, very good. That's very good, very good, very good. You still have your N64, Meredith? That's amazing. Blow on those cartridges. Oh my goodness. PS4, Xbox 180. See? This is what happens when you guys start talking. We have some fun. We have some fun. Lots of video games, though. I really do not listen to any of the haters about how much video game usage that you're doing right now. If it rots your brain, it rots your brain, right? Screw it. Just what I will say though is like, play it enough to not get bored of it, and then take breaks, because yeah, getting burnt out, that kind of thing, it's not fun. Getting burnt out on a game because you've paid all that money for it and you played it and then you're like, That's what let's see, what Madden did I have? I had Madden. No, it wasn't Madden. It was, this is gonna date me because you guys are gonna be like, I wasn't even born yet. I had Madden. Not Madden. Why do I keep saying Madden? Because it wasn't Madden. I forgot what it was called, but NFL 99, something like that. And I used to play it on PS constantly. And so whenever my friends would come over and be like, "You want to play, NFL 99 or whatever?" And I'm like, "No, that game's boring, right? Game is so boring." Not with 2K, you won't stop grinding the career mode. Well, I'm sure they've added incentives for you to keep playing, right? So, games have gotten quite a bit more complex than they used to be, right? Street football, hey man, I'm not that old, but yes, I did play street football. No, backyard wasn't big enough for it. We had a pool. But yeah, street football, because we had a lot of space in my neighborhood. But I did have a PlayStation. I mean, come on now. I had a PlayStation and then a Wii. The Wii is in the closet right now, gathering dust. Probably never to be used again. Ne'er to get a penny, because I looked recently on how much Wiis were selling for. Ooh, I wonder how much they're selling for now. They were selling for like $20. I'm like, oh, is this forever gonna be sitting here? It's gonna be a relic of the past for my kids. They're gonna be like, what's this? Like, well, in 2007, a game engine came out called the Wii. Yeah, don't worry about why there are two eyes. Wii Mario Kart on the daily. See, that's the one game I never got for Wii, because I was always told that you needed to get the, to have a really good experience, you needed to get the extension for it, and I just never got it. So they're selling for $200 now? Oh, I need to go look. All right. I'm gonna have to go look. Thanks for the... no, I'm not actually familiar with that, Kyler. I'm not familiar with that. Oh, I'm gonna go look. Thanks for the intel, Meredith. Appreciate it. All right. Now in chat, what I want you to do is tell me about your phobias. What specific thing do you have a fear of? What specific thing? Is it spiders? Is it snakes? Is it social situations? It's feet. Okay. All right. Driving a car. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Julia. The ocean. Well, good thing you're in a mostly landlocked state, Ashlyn. Wasps. Feel you on that one, Julia. Definitely feel you on that one. I have a phobia of bees. I know they're just trying to do their work, but when I was a kid, I was stung too many times, and that's it. That's it. Like, get me out of there. If there's a bee, I'm walking the other way. I know they're not going to bother me. You don't need to tell me about how crucial bees are for our lives. Just, no. I don't want to know. Snakes. Okay, Indiana Jones, Meredith over here. Very good. Yes, I have watched Our Planet on Netflix. There's some... Yeah, I mean, it's vast, it's dark, it's deep. I get not being a fan of the ocean. I'm not a fan of the ocean because of sand. Unlike Anakin Skywalker in that way, it's sand, it's coarse, and it gets everywhere. And then I'm also not a fan of kelp. And growing up in California, going to the beach meant being touched by kelp every time you went into the water. Okay, because the kelp is the big plant that grows up from the ocean floor and then it gets detached from a big wave, and then it's like free floating, and then it just fills all of the beaches, and it's ugh. I was a terrible Californian. People would be like, "You want to go to the beach?" I'm like, not really. Really? But it's there. I'm like, yeah. And then when I went to Santa Barbara, people were like, "Oh my gosh, you are doing grad school by the beach." I'm like, yeah, don't go to it. It's nice. It's pretty to look at. I don't want to go to it. Christine, falling between the train and the cement. Like the space between. So, Elena says all bugs. Okay. My phobia, Ashen, is bees and wasps. Not a fan of them. Astrid has to kill them for me. Snakes and scorpions. Trypophobia, Meredith. What is trypophobia? Heights, acrophobia is what that is. Datavian, fear of driving off mountains into an ocean. Can't swim. Yeah, that would... Don't drive near cliff... Don't drive near bluffs. Do not drive near ocean bluffs. Luckily, there are none in Illinois. Unless you do that, like, here around the Peoria River, which I don't recommend either. Car crashes. Really? Trypophobia is a fear of hole-filled surfaces, from what I can gather. I don't... Hole-filled surfaces, I don't know. Alright, so let me finish up anxiety disorders. Did I... Yeah. We chatted for a little too long. Oh well, that's fine. So, specific phobias have to do with, specific object, activity, situation, right? And so those, as we've discussed, those are, Oh, you're scared on those bridges? Okay, yeah, I dig that. They're pretty high. They're pretty high. Social anxiety disorder used to be called social phobia, but in the DSM-V it's renamed. Okay, so phobias are a clinical phobia. That is, they reach clinical levels when it impairs and impacts your life in a negative way. Okay? In a negative way. So some of these things that we're talking about, the bees and wasps and other things like that, are probably, generally speaking, not clinical. They don't negatively impact or impair your life. Okay? You'll do it if you need to. You'll get around it if you need to. Okay? So just bear that in mind when we talk about phobias in this way. Okay? And so social anxiety disorder used to be called social phobia, but this is intense fear about other people's judgments. And so people who have social phobia or social anxiety disorder avoid social situations. And if they're unable to avoid them, they're going to experience social anxiety. Okay? Strong social anxiety. Okay? Moving on to, again, more rare. Okay? More rare. We have OCD. Obsessive compulsive disorder. OCD. Obsessive compulsive disorder. It's an anxiety disorder. It may not be characterized one in common conversation, but it is. It is characterized by persistent and repetitive thoughts. That's the obsession part of it. and then persistent and repetitive actions. Those are the compulsions, right? And so you can have one or the other, but generally speaking, because it's hyphenated obsessive compulsive disorder, it's usually both, okay? So those obsessive thoughts and compulsive behaviors persistently interfere with everyday life and cause distress, right? It's more common in teens and young adults than older people, and there is a strong genetic basis because identical twin studies show that if one twin has it, the other one is likely to have it as well, okay? And so what are those common things that people obsess or compulse about? Well, generally speaking, one of the more common obsessions are what we would consider germophobias, okay? So concern with dirt, germs, or toxins, okay? And generally speaking, this is the higher, this is the more common obsession among people who have OCD, okay? And then there are, to a lesser extent, something terrible happening, and then to an even lesser extent, the symmetry, order, or exactness. So if you've seen Monk, it's an interesting take on OCD. If you've seen The Big Bang Theory and Sheldon, he has an obsession with symmetry, order, and exactness. Really, he has all of them. The symmetry is best expressed in the running gag, which is unfortunate that it's called a gag, but has to do with how he knocks on the door, right? He knocks 3 times and says Penny, knocks 3 times and says Penny, and he does that 3 times. And then in one episode, Penny prevents him from knocking on the door for the third sequence, and he struggles to contain himself until he could find another surface to finish the action, okay? So that's the obsession, right? The symmetry and the order and the exactness need to be assuaged, and one of the ways that you assuage those obsessions is by doing the repetitive behaviors, the compulsions, right? And so people who have germophobia engage in compulsive behaviors where they are constantly cleaning, okay? Whether it's their hands, whether it's their entire bodies, whether it's objects in their houses, right? So, and you can see that that is a high percentage, right? That is a way to manage the anxiety that these obsessions create. That's why it's an anxiety disorder, because the obsessions create the anxiety, and compulsions are used to assuage the anxiety, okay? Repeating rituals, in and out of a door, up, down from a chair. This is one of the compulsions that Monk shows in pretty much every episode. If you're not familiar with Monk, I do suggest it. It's a pretty decent show. It over-exaggerates OCD quite a bit, but most TV shows are going to do that, right? And then there, to go with the something terrible happening, you have checking doors, locks, appliances, car brakes, homework, etc., right? So these compulsions, since their behaviors, are easier to report than the anxieties that prompt them, right? You can see that these numbers are quite a bit lower than these numbers, but these numbers implicate and imply that these are actually higher than that's what's being reported. Okay. I do the same thing, Julia. I do the same thing. It used to be higher when I wasn't managing my anxiety with medication. I used to park my car out on the street, on a busy street, and I used to go out in the middle of the night wondering whether or not I locked the door. I used to literally wake up, walk out of my house, go down the street where I parked it, and see whether or not I locked it. Yeah, that's rough. The last one that I want to talk about, and then what we're going to do when we start class on Thursday, is we're going to understand the anxiety disorders, where they come from. But the last one that I want to introduce before we end for today is post-traumatic stress disorder, right? PTSD. So the characterization between of PTSD is haunting memories, nightmares, social withdrawal, jumpy anxiety, numbness of feeling, and or insomnia lingering for 4 weeks or more after a traumatic experience. The timestamp is incredibly important for PTSD. It does have to be 4 weeks or later, okay? Because there's actually a disorder that is less often discussed, which is ASD, which is not the same thing as autism spectrum disorder. It's acute stress disorder, stress disorder. And so that is immediately after the trauma to 4 weeks. So that would be the diagnosis. It would generally speaking have these characteristics, these criteria associated with it, okay? But the time determines whether it's ASD or PTSD. Okay, and the one we talk about, of course, is PTSD, because this obviously is a longer affliction, and it, generally speaking, is a lifelong chronic condition that has to be managed for a person's entire life. Okay, and so the more common sufferers of PTSD are military veterans, of course, because war is hell, and lots of bad things happen in fighting, in conflicts, right? And so veterans do come back and do suffer from PTSD, okay? PTSD was first identified after World War I, when psychologists were studying veterans of World War I, and they found that large bangs would impact these veterans quite significantly. They would cower, they would duck for cover, they would scream. And so it was identified as what was called shell shock, because mortars were first used in World War I. In the trench warfare, you would send a mortar over to the other side, and it would big boom, right? And so they called it shell shock. Eventually, this morphed into post-traumatic stress disorder / just stress disorder, right? Stress disorders, right? So we have acute and PT, post-traumatic, okay? But PTSD can be felt and experienced by survivors of accidents, whether they're car crashes, plane accidents, train accidents, whatever, boat accidents, whatever kind of vehicle you want to think about, so any kind of accident, a building falling, right? You can have PTSD from a building falling. Survivors of the World Trade Center have PTSD, okay? Disasters, tornadoes, hurricanes, big giant fires, right? And then, of course, violent / sexual assaults. Violent assaults, like getting punched in the face repeatedly and then getting mugged, and then sexual assaults, like rape, okay? Those folks can also have PTSD, right? Women are a higher risk, essentially double the risk than men in developing disorder following any kind of traumatic event. Okay, so that's what the statistics share there. But we do have to hand it to the people that are survivors of these traumas, right? The people who suffer from PTSD and struggle from PTSD need to be given props for dealing with a really diabolical mental state. I mean, like, you wouldn't wish this upon your worst enemies. That's terrible. Haunting memories, nightmares, social withdrawal, jumpy anxiety, numbness, right? Combine numbness with jumpy anxiety, and you're just like, what is going on, right? Insomnia, we already talked about how lack of sleep is real crap, right? So men and women display what we give props for as survivor resiliency. And that is where we are going to end today.